Well, folks, today we are going to be looking at the 2026 Senate election, and specifically, we are going to be updating our prediction. This will be the June 2025 prediction for the U.S. Senate elections in 2026. We do have a couple changes in the ratings on certain states that we are going to be making here. And we'd like to go through and discuss some of these battleground states, some of these competitive states, things that could really change between now and then. So first, we're going to start off with some changes that we are making to some of the seats. First off, we are going to be making a change to Illinois. We are moving this from a likely Democrat to a solid Democrat seat, and I'll explain why. A major representative, Lauren Underwood, dropped out. She was initially, had polled in 2 polls, I believe, had polled at the top. 2 polls showed that she was leading. And in the other 2 polls, she was pulling 16 and 20% of the vote. Now, there has not been another poll taken since then. I believe that we're going to see support coalesce behind someone like Julia Stratton. That's just personally who I think. I think either, you have 2 representatives and a lieutenant governor right now. I think you could see a lot of money being poured in to Juliana Stratton because, she has she has the endorsement of J.B. Pritzker, the Illinois governor. He's got a lot of money. She's got a lot of backing inside the state. I think I think she could emerge as a candidate now after Lauren Underwood has dropped out of this election. And I feel like I can confidently make the assumption that this will stay Democrat. We didn't really have a doubt. I just think because you're not going to have an incumbent, it's going to be a new face who we could see leading the Democrats. I think it was fair to say that this was going to be a likely Democrat seat with the idea that eventually it was going to be a solid Democrat seat. So that is the first change we are making in this map here. The second change that we are going to be making in the 2026 Senate prediction map is in Iowa. I am going to be moving where we currently have Joni Ernst, who is a likely Republican here, from likely to lean Republican. I feel like this is something that's warranted as of right now. Iowa is a very, very tricky state. She only won re-election back in 2020 by about 6 percentage points. Now, do I believe that Democrats are going to flip this? No. I really don't think that they're going to flip this, but I think it is fair to say that this race is getting closer. There's a couple reasons why. First of all, Joni Ernst just gave Democrats about as much ammunition as they need for the rest of the cycle. If you saw this, there was a clip where Joni Ernst was at a town hall. Someone asked, why are you letting people die because of these Medicaid cuts? And she responded by saying a very unfortunate line that we're all going to die sometime, which is very, very idiotic. Now, do I think that alone is what's going to change the makeup of this race? Absolutely not. Let's be honest about this. No, that's not going to change the makeup of this race, the actual structural pieces of this race. Now, Iowa is a very interesting state. Remember this. Iowa's very, very interesting. This was a state that voted for Barack Obama you go back to 2008. This was a state that voted for Barack Obama, and Barack Obama won in 2012. Eventually, it flipped to Donald Trump in 2016. Trump won it by almost 10 points. Obviously, we saw that margin decrease a little bit in Iowa, and then, of course, increased by about 4 percentage points in the 2024 election. There's a couple reasons why I think this race could be close. Number one, go back and look at the 2018 midterms. 2018 midterms were not great for Republicans. Remember, in Iowa, Republicans held a seat. This guy was kind of a borderline neo-Nazi, but you had 3 of the congressional districts held by Republicans. 1 was held by Democrats. 2018 rolls around. Democrats flip. Iowa Congressional District 1, 3, they hold on to 2, and they barely lose in Congressional District 4. Now remember, this was Steve King versus J.D. Scholten. Now J.D. Scholten is running for governor now. J.D. Scholten turned a seat that went from 22 points for King and voted for Trump, I think by a bigger margin, to within 3 points. The Republicans were winning the seat by. He's a popular Democrat in Iowa, plus the fact that you have a very, very popular Democrat running on the gubernatorial side where you have Rob Sands. So he is the only elected official statewide who's a Democrat in Iowa. He is running on the gubernatorial side. So I think having a strong Democrat at the top of the ticket, plus you're now having a strong Democrat jump in on the Senate side, plus Donald Trump is not on the ballot. Iowa, look at this. Remember, in 2018, We can look at this. If you look at the actual popular vote in 2018, Democrats won the popular vote statewide in 2018. They won it by almost 50,000 votes. Statewide, Democrats won, if you're looking solely at the popular vote. Now, obviously, there was not a Senate Senate election in 2018. But there's a lot of people who speculate that it could have been a very, very close Senate election in 2018, just simply due to the climate at that time. And for all of these reasons, I believe it's fair to say that we're going to move this to a lean Republican state as of right now. I think she has a strong challengers coming from the left side. You also have Nathan Sage, who actually in a recent poll was leading Joni Ernst. Now, granted, it was funded by the Democrats. I'm not taking it too seriously. But we've seen similar things happen before. Look at Nebraska. Independent Dan Osborne lost a very respectable race in 2024. And it seems likely that he'll run again in Nebraska, but also you could see something similar to like that happen in Iowa. And I just think that Democrats have a much more proven recruit in Representative J.D. Scholten, who is now going to run for Senate. Simply, I think that's why we're moving it right here to the lean Republican column. Now, another change that I'm going to make is I am moving North Carolina from a toss-up state to a slight, or I call it slight, Republican advantage by a point. This simply is just because of some indecision right now. You look at the Senate. Thom Tillis obviously was expected to lose in 2020. He was expected to lose in 2014, but somehow he wins by a little over a point and a half here. In 2026, we are expecting that Roy Cooper is going to jump in this race. As of right now, he's not jumped in this race. He is not. He is really dragging his feet, and we've seen this with numerous different governors. Look in New Hampshire with Chris Sununu. Look in Georgia with Brian Kemp. I would not be surprised if you look at Tim Walz in Minnesota. Now, Tim Walz, that's kind of a little different story, but still. You look at Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. You have tons of governors who are not willing to leave their executive office, or they are leaving the executive office, but they're not going to trade it for a seat in the Senate. It is a much, much different job being a senator versus a governor. A governor, you're the executive of the state. You are not one of 100 in a large body. And Wiley Nickel, while I think he will put up a significant challenge to Thom Tillis, I think ultimately, I'm not worried about this in the slightest. If Wiley Nickel is, and I shouldn't say not worried in the slightest, but if Wiley Nickel is the candidate, I think that I will probably keep this somewhere around a tilt to lean Republican state going forward. It's just indecision from Roy Cooper. We have to make a decision here. We have to start making some moves here. Yes, are we 18 months out? Absolutely. But now's the time. Now's the time to jump in. And for those reasons, I'm moving North Carolina, which leaves 2 toss-up seats here. I also believe, now, I don't know if I'm willing to make this move yet, but I think by next month, I should have a decision on what my thoughts are on Ohio. Am I going to move this from a lean Republican to a likely Republican? I think that's very, very likely that could happen. You have a strong candidate in John Husted. You have a strong candidate on the gubernatorial side in Vivek Ramaswamy, who has secured the endorsement of the Republican Party in Ohio. I think with 2 top of the tickets who are very strong, very pragmatic individuals, I think we could make the assumption that we could move this to the right, but also if Sherrod Brown jumps in this race, I'm going to keep it right where it is. So we kind of need to let this play out. I'm not going to make a move on it as of right now, but these were the changes that I'm willing to make as of right now. We're still going to hold Texas where it is as a likely Republican. There was some good news for Republicans out of Texas. And let's see if they have it in here. There was right here. Nope. Here we go. Nope. We need to go down. Here we go. This was some good polling to see. It was a YouGov poll that was done about a month ago. It showed John Cornyn up on Colin Allred by 4 percentage points, and it showed Ken Paxton up on Colin Allred by 2 percentage points, with less people undecided. Which basically, if you're looking at this group here, 2% of these undecideds all went for Colin Allred. Not a great look, but also it was better than some of the polling that we were seeing before. especially from Brad Parcells when we saw Ken Paxton was losing to Colin Allred by like 15 points here. Not realistic, but ultimately, John Cornyn, as a incumbent senator, he's an incumbent senator here, and this guy's getting 27, 30. He's not even getting 40% in these polls, which really makes me believe that Ken Paxton could be leading the ticket. If Ken Paxton is leading the ticket, I probably would move it from a likely to a lean Republican seat. Not willing to make that move yet, but we're going to see what happens. This was good news for Republicans across the board. Like, this was good. They needed to see something like this. It's most likely Colin Allred will be the nominee in 2026. Yes, Beto O'Rourke has expressed interest. I think, who knows? I think Colin Allred would probably lead in the ticket. We'll see exactly what happens. We don't have any polls on the Democrat side as of right now. But look at this. John Cornyn in a head-to-head matchup here. Look at this. Against Ken Paxton. He breaks 40% in one poll. That's kind of pathetic as an incumbent. Like, that's pretty pathetic. But, so those are the changes that we're looking to make here. Some things that we're still watching, though. Some states that I think we still need to keep an eye on. Minnesota, obviously, a seat that's been vacated by Tina Smith. She is not running for re-election in 2026. We have Angie Craig and Peggy Flanagan. You know, you have Peggy Flanagan, who is much more of the progressive wing of the party. And then you have Angie Craig, who is much more on the moderate side of the party, but who I do not believe will have... at one point, I thought Angie Craig might have better appeal statewide. I don't know. I don't think she's going to have as broad of appeal as I maybe thought 4 or 5 months ago. But I think this is a true battle that we're going to see. I think if Angie Craig wins, I think she'll have a better margin, but it's hard to say because you're going after two completely different constituencies. As Angie Craig, you're trying to be this moderate, quasi-moderate, I should say, who's trying to appeal across the aisle, where Peggy Flanagan, she's trying to drive out support within the progressive movement. She's trying to drive up the vote in Hennepin County, in Ramsey County. That's where you're really trying to drive the vote up. And now on the Republican side, we have Adam Schwarzy and Royce White, who is in for the U.S. Senate. Obviously, I've said this multiple times, if Royce White is the nominee, this will probably move to a likely Democrat seat. If Adam Schwarzy, I don't think he's going to be a shakeup candidate, but ultimately, I just don't... Royce White is not going to win. Royce White is not going to win. We honestly need to see someone like I wanted a Tim Pawlenty, but I also want him to run for governor. You know, Kendall Quayles, he's running for governor here, so he's not going to be in this race. But even someone like a Tom Emmer or a Tim Pawlenty, I'd like Tim Pawlenty, maybe a Michelle Tafoya. But those are some things that we're keeping an eye on in Minnesota right now. In Georgia, a couple things that we're keeping an eye on in the state. Obviously, we know that Jon Ossoff running for re-election. Brian Kemp will not be running in this election. But look at this right here. You have two Democrats. You know, he's actually... Oh, excuse me. I'm very sorry. We have to go over to 2026 here. My apologies. Obviously, the guy's got $11 million cash on hand right now. And Democrats are going to plow a lot of money into the state. They're going to plow a lot of money into the state. On the Republican side, you have Buddy Carter, John King, and Reagan Box. I think as of right now, John King might be the best candidate. If we're being realistic, I like Rich McCormick. I'm a fan of Tyler Harper. I'd be a fan of Brian Jack, and I hate to say it, but Brad Raffensperger. There was a poll that came out, and let's see if we can find it here, in which Brad Raffensperger was neck and neck with Jon Ossoff. That's pretty good. It's like, we're just going to put it out there. But Jon Ossoff beating Mike Collins by 3 points. And obviously, we're so far out, these numbers are going to change a lot. But I still think that Jon Ossoff versus a generic Republican, look, March, neck and neck. Jon Ossoff and Brad Raffensperger, neck and neck here. I think that's something. Obviously, we are keeping this as a toss-up race right now. We really need to see who emerges on the Republican side. Who is going to lead the Republicans? Like that's the biggest question that we have in the race right now. Who is going to lead the Republicans? Brian Jack, you know, Donald Trump there's been some speculation that Donald Trump would really, really like to see Brian Jack jump in this race, we'll see exactly what happens. So we're ultimately going to see what happens in this race here. A couple other races that we could take a look at that we really want to keep an update on is Susan Collins in Maine. Democrats are really having a hard time finding someone to run against her. It's been tough. Jared Golden's not running. Shelley Pingree not running. She's running for re-election as in Maine's first congressional district. Janet Mills could potentially run, but right now they have Jordan Wood, who's a former chief of staff for Katie Porter. They are really, really struggling. And we know Susan Collins, $3 million cash on hand. Republicans are going to pour millions of dollars into the state so they don't lose it. So no update. Honestly, we keep trending in the direction we're trending. I may even be willing to say that this is going to be a likely Republican seat. We're not there yet. Don't get me wrong. We're definitely not there yet, but I'd like to see some things another state to keep an eye on. We're not going to make any changes, but in Kentucky with Mitch McConnell, obviously not running for re-election, you have Andy Barr, Daniel Cameron, potentially a Scott Jennings, potentially a Nate Morris running in this race. We're going to have to see what happens. Right now, I think it's fair to say that Daniel Cameron might be leading the pack. You can see he's won statewide. He was the former attorney general. He lost Andy Beshear in 2023 by a pretty close, 3 or 4 points, I believe. Obviously, Andy Barr's got a lot more cash on hand right now, but Daniel Cameron is pulling pretty well. Pretty well. Even the most recent one at 4%. Now, obviously, Nate Morris, and they don't have others in here, I should say, undecided. You put Scott Jennings in there, maybe you see a shift. But I think Daniel Cameron, look, he's won statewide elections before. He has. And I think he would be a good senator from there. I think there's still a lot that's going to play out in this race, of course. But let's see. I don't think there's anything else that we're really looking at moving as of right now. Obviously, New Hampshire, Jeanne Shaheen not running for re-election. Chris Pappas, he is running there. Republicans, they've got Scott Brown. It seems like it's going to be a Chris Pappas versus a Scott Brown here. I'm still going to leave this where we have it right now. New Jersey, we're keeping an eye on Cory Booker, but not making any changes. Obviously, we still have this as a likely Democrat seat as of right now. I think within the next couple months, I'd be willing to hear the argument that Virginia is going to be solid. I think if Youngkin was in this race, I think it could be likely or maybe lean Democrat. If Youngkin's not in this race, it's a solid Democrat seat. Mark Warner will most likely win re-election here. Some places like Louisiana, is Donald Trump going to try and primary Bill Cassidy from the right? That's an interesting take on things. What's going to happen in Alabama? Tommy Tuberville not running for re-election. Who do the Republicans have to run? We can look and see in Alabama 2026. As of right now, let's see on the Republican side, you have Steve Marshall, who is the current Attorney General. Jared Hudson, looks like he's a business owner and a former nominee for Jefferson County Sheriff. You have a couple other people, Barry Moore, who's a U.S. representative from Alabama, Mo Brooks, who is a former representative from Alabama's 5th Congressional District. We'll see what happens here. Obviously, this is going to be a safe Republican seat. Don't even get me wrong. Democrats have a couple unknown people, and then, of course, Doug Jones, we know, worked in the Clinton administration, won that special election against Roy Moore back in, 2017, 2018? I think it was 2017. Yeah, December of 2017, he won that election. So we'll see who's going to replace Tommy Tuberville here. Colorado, obviously, it's going to be a safe Democrat seat. Hickenlooper's running for re-election here. I guess another thing that you could look at in Iowa, simply, if there are still massive tariffs, and we know that tariffs, they hurt agricultural. Obviously, this new deal with the UK is going to be buying $6 or $7 billion more worth of agricultural products from the US. So we'll see how that plays in here. In Michigan, let's see if we can look at Michigan. Obviously, Gary Peters not running for re-election. We have Mike Rogers at the head of the ticket, potentially Tudor Dixon, potentially Bill, I don't know how to say his last name, but he's a representative from Michigan's 4th Congressional District, could potentially be jumping in this race here. Obviously, still keeping an eye on this. This is one of the 2 states Donald Trump won in 2024. You have a Democrat senator who's up for re-election in 2026. So we're going to see on the Democrat side, obviously, Haley Stevens, Mallory McMarrow, 2 big names. I think Haley Stevens will probably be the nominee. Probably. That's just just my thoughts. I think she's a relatively, as a Democrat, she's a relatively solid Democrat from the state of Michigan. She won in a competitive race back in 2018. Still, we're going to keep this where it is right now. Democrats and Republicans are going to be vying for this seat. It's going to be very interesting to see how it all turns out, but obviously not looking to make any changes there or in Georgia as of right now. But this is where my map is as of right now. Republicans, and if we're looking at best case, worst case scenario, Republicans in this scenario right here, they're winning 52 seats. Like, they're winning 52 seats here. Not concerned about that. Democrats, obviously, I have their, where they're at right now, it's at 45. Obviously, if they pick up, or they hold Michigan, they hold Georgia, that brings them to 47. They want to get anywhere near the majority. They need to pick up North Carolina. They need to pick up Maine. I just don't see that happening. I don't see Maine happening. North Carolina, maybe, if Roy Cooper's in the race. We'll see. But I don't see Democrats flipping Iowa. I don't see them flipping Ohio. I don't see them flipping Alaska. That puts their ceiling at 49 seats, but really that puts their ceiling at like 48. But this is how I think these two are toss-ups, right? You really can't make a determination. Right now, I've got the Republicans. Their ceiling would be 55 here. Most likely 55, maybe 56, But the Democrats, I'd say their floor as of right now, 45 seats. So that is going to wrap things up for today, folks. As always, drop down below, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. And folks, we will catch you next time.